but so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets were there, the bombs bursting came through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of
Good evening, folks. 9/11. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I didn't want to show a whole bunch of bombs and stuff crashing into buildings. We all know about that. But welcome to Investigator News, and I'm your host, Ellie Holder, and we got William on the phone. William, what'd you think of that? Beautiful little girl.
She had hope in her eyes.
Wow. I mean, she hit those high notes.
That's what America's all about, is hope in their eyes.
Yeah, and how wonderful our country is. And that we still remember 9/11. And William, I know you have a lot to say on 9/11. I got to put my screens down on this. The Afghan opposition leader warns country once again, it is a safe haven for terrorists. And, I've been saying this all along, that we still have camps. I've got pictures of camps, of the newest ones, and it's just all over the country. And they're ready. And like I said, I have an FBI report on a terrorist that was found here, came from Canada. And he was seeking to get guns from ISIS here in the United States. So, William, what do you have to say about 9/11?
So, the terrorist bombing started back in '93 when the blind sheikh issued a fatwa against the leader of Israel, the leader of Egypt, and the United States in general. And the first bombing of the Twin Towers was done by, started with a Palestinian group. And then some other Al-Qaeda got involved. And six of them went to prison for the rest of their lives. They got 1 year for each life that was lost in the basement of the trade towers. Well, you know how politicians say never let a disaster go to waste? That's kind of what happened. It was, from that point on, there was a secondary desire to hit those towers because it was a symbol of America's financial dominance. And and we lost 3,000 people, innocent people.
Yeah. Now, 3 years since the withdrawal from Afghanistan, 23 years since 9/11. And
I was very proud of the military. Within 6 weeks, we had a couple of our first medals of honor on Tucker Gar on an Overwatch mission for Anaconda, to block Anaconda from leaving Afghanistan and hiding out in Pakistan. So America responded well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we ever quite understood, the politics of all of this. This all really goes back before World War One, and particular animosities. And once the Muslim Brotherhood got started in Egypt, everything really started cooking, and we ended up with a leader like Saddam. We ended up.
Well, the Taliban was the spawn. They had a conflict between a few leaders, and that's where ISIS came from. It was a separation of the Taliban for the younger ones. The older ones, of course, were the Talibans.
Yeah, and they offered training camps to Al Qaeda and their madrasas, so they're religious organizations that gave them the will to do what they were doing. And it's hard to look back. We've got 21, 22-year-old kids now.
23 years ago. And what gets me is the squad with Omar and stuff is saying, "Oh, let's not pick on the Muslims." Well, no, we're not picking on the Muslims. We are going after those and hold them responsible, the ones that were a part of this. Not all Muslims were a part of this. It was Islamic extremists that were a big part of this.
Well, when we talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, we're talking about a trans, I guess you'd call it West Asiatic terror affiliation, and very few people are in it. You're right.
Yeah, and they say that now 23 years later they've had a chance to build up, and it's once again a safe haven for terrorists, and it's become a battlefield once again. The leader Maud Massoud basically said the threat is from Afghanistan is much greater today than it was on 9/11, and the U.S. has failed to keep its number of terrorists coming into this country. There's just an open door since it was more than what it was 23 years ago. So he's ready.
Yeah, and keep in mind, one of those guys that were arrested for that bombing, he was a taxi driver in New York. Another guy ran, a food services operation in Texas. These look like regular, everyday people.
Yeah. A long time ago, William, I put up a bunch of pictures of terrorists mixed in with all different nationalities, and you couldn't really tell the difference of who was who.
No, and they seem to be civil. Many of them are eloquent and have fine senses of humor, and yet when these indoctrinated individuals get together, I think they give each other impetus to move forward with plans that have been made by other people. So,
and then to move along, not really move along, but we had this man that was arrested in Canada in connection with a plot to carry out a mass shooting or even a bombing in a Jewish center in Brooklyn. And this was recently. And he was planning an October 7th attack or even 9/11. This was a 21-year-old man. Now, think when I seen that 21-year-old man, and the 9/11 happened 23 years ago. So this shows the hatred that is still uh, put in the heads of these Islamic extremists, even the young. They train them at 2, 3 years old. They put guns in their hands and teach them to hate America, and that America is the one to get.
Then they reach their maturity. They're physically strong. They understand what they were taught. They're at an age that they can effectuate what they were taught, and out it comes. It's like you said, they start these kids very young, and they don't quite get to an age to where they understand that maybe some of it's hot air, right? And so they take it as absolute belief, and by the time they figure it out, they're in a court someplace looking at a life sentence.
Now, this a 21-year-old guy, man, Mohammed Khan, he's being charged with attempting to provide material support to ISIS terror group here in the United States. And he was arrested while attempting to cross the Canadian border into the U.S. Now, federal investigators say they've been watching this guy for a while, and he was attempting to get AR-style rifles from other ISIS members out of New York. So what's that tell you? New York City has got ISIS in it.
Well, New York's the financial hub of really the world, isn't it? That's where, when you think about finance, when you think about effectuating the building of any industry, the first place you look is New York.
Yeah. And it's not like, everybody was upset because the FBI knew about the 9/11 attacks. They were getting messages. They were seeing emails. They were seeing text, or not text. It wasn't text back then, but they were seeing signs that there was something coming up, but they didn't know when. And now they have changed their tactics, according to an FBI guy that I have talked to. He says that there is so much that's put into it. There's a lot of intelligence and multiple agencies, both here and abroad, that work together to vet out raw intelligence from social media. And there's wiretaps and other types of surveillance to collect intelligence. And they weed through it to find those that may lead or indicate a threat. And they have been watching this guy for a while. My thing, William, if they're threatening to a bomb or shoot or a plane or whatever, my question to him was, why didn't they just go get him? They said they can't because they have to have enough info to be able to catch this guy, have enough materials, or show that he's got the weapons to do it, because otherwise it's just arresting him. It's like he could just come back and say, no, I wasn't planning nothing. So at this point, we now know, and according to Canada officials, that it's not just this point man that they caught coming from Canada. There's more. There was more in his group, but they've scattered. And, you mentioned earlier about the 9/11 run into Pakistan. They say that many of this guy's group is now fled to Pakistan.
Well,
so,
they go to Pakistan, Ellie, because it's the one Muslim country, I'm sorry, that has a nuclear weapon. The United States not likely to invade it. So they see it as being an ultimate sanctuary. It's their bunker Joker, if you will, when everything goes wrong.
Yeah. And you know, they're saying that you know, Beth had something to say. It has nothing to do with intelligence. They had the info to stop that. They did. And see, that's where they knew that they had went wrong. Or is the FBI going to come out and say, we did wrong for 9/11? No, they're not. And they didn't. And there was really no real big investigation into it. But now we have this guy. And I don't know why the media didn't report on this, because this to me is huge. Because they had to track him down, and then they had to get him and pull him in. And then the rest of his group fled. Okay. The rest of the group is now sending messages, according to my friend, that they're going to come back. You know, just because they took out one, there's still more of them that was willing to do the job. So we know that they were waiting for AK-47 type rifles and explosives from ISIS members out of New York. So the FBI, and I asked him, I said, so are they looking into this? Are they looking for these ISIS members? He says, so hard to tell because they have so many migrants. The men in between, they're saying about 30, 35, were requesting to go to New York. And they thought it was odd because New York is already overrun with the migrants. But from what they've been able to find out from this gentleman was when he was talking and they were getting the intel is they wanted to recruit more, and ISIS has been recruiting gang members to join their fight. And so I asked, so what are they going to go after New York again, or where are they going to go? Well, of course, you know, William, you know that they've said ISIS and these terrorist groups say, you know, they want New York, they want DC, they want California, they want different places, but it's mainly New York and DC. And so, as you know, I got to scroll down here. They said definitely watch out on 9/11. Well, 9/11 has come and may be gone. And then the next one be October 7th. They are huge on doing something on October 7th. Have they had the, and I said, have they had the time to plan this? It was already planned. They just need, it's just like with 9/11, they had those pilots, or not the pilots, the terrorists that got on these planes. They were already trained.
Yeah.
And if they wouldn't have been the ones, they would have had backups.
It was planned on October 6th of last year.
Yeah. And of course they're angry because of Gaza and the Palestinians. And so, you know, to sum all this up, because I didn't want to make a big report out of this, when I asked him, I said, what is the possibilities of anything happening October 7th? He said, good possibility, because if it was already in the makings and they already got the head guy, this this gentleman that they caught out of Canada, that the plan is already in effect. If it's not October 7th, we still, as the FBI and Department of Defense and Justice, have got to keep an eye and keep looking for these men that fled to Pakistan and probably, he said, already back here by now. So,
what was I going to say about? So we're probably never going to get a report on 9/11 that's very detailed, and the reason why is the same reason we will probably never get a really good report on what happened with Trump and what happened there in Pennsylvania.
yeah.
Because it's an abject failure for government. And people don't like to air their laundry, and if they can hide behind, classified information, they're going to do it.
Yeah. And, the other thing goes that with these ISIS and other, like what's the name of that gang? Um,
They get intelligence from, like the first bombing group, the Six. They modified what they did just listening to the intelligence from the courts. The courts told them what not to do the next time.
Now, the thing is when I was talking to him, I said, what about this trendy Araga street gang that is,
Venezuela?
Yeah, that's in Colorado. Okay. They said they found out that the Biden administration, in partnership with Denver authorities, and they subsidized NGOs, provided the funding and logistics to place a large number of Venezuelan migrants / the prison gangs into Aurora, creating a magnet of crime and gangs. But they also found out this is how they were bringing a lot of them into the sanctuary cities all over the country, especially San Francisco and New York. So the FBI is now, and I wish I knew, he wouldn't tell me who. I said, well, who, name some FBI guys. No, he's not allowed to do that. Okay. But he did say that the Biden administration, in partnership with Denver authorities. So if you live in Colorado, folks, you start going after your Denver politicians for this, that they subsidize NGOs and to bring them in and put them into sanctuary cities. Why would this administration want to bring in thugs, a terrorist? If there wasn't a plan, if this administration didn't have a plan. Now, where was Kamala Harris on this? She had to have known. And is she going to keep bringing them in? Are they going to keep flying them in? Because he says there's plane flights daily. Still coming in and still bringing them in. I always wondered who was on those planes, and now we know. They're bringing in special people into this country. They're bringing terrorists into our country, and they're paying for it, or we're paying for it with our tax money. So we're paying to bring terrorists in to do. We don't know.
Well, we don't know that they're going to do it. That's the thing. We're bringing them in for plausible deniability, will you say? So that people aren't caught with their fingers in the cookie jar, so to speak. This is how governments do it. Governments do is they use people with propensities, and then they just get them in the right place. And if it happens, it's like, surprise, how did that happen? We're going to need more funding for our agency, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of never ending.
Yeah. And, another thing is this administration just gave Iran more money. But then, today, Blinken announced that $700 million in aid is going to Ukraine. And you know what they want? They said, yeah, but we need more money for defense because we want long range strikes, and we need permission for it, but we also need the money for the missiles to do it. And Blinken said they're going to go ahead and agree with this. $700 million more.
Yeah, they want it in cash. They don't want it in arms. So what may be happening, we should set that aside a little bit. We may have just bought off the leader of Ukraine to take a vacation someplace with $250 million.
Yeah, and the other thing that we haven't heard about is the $250 million in military aid to Eastern Europe that we're going to also hand out this week.
Poland is terrified, and they're buying They're buying American weapons at twice the rate America is buying American weapons right now.
boy. And and not only that, but William, when we look at the aid that we give to Iran under the JPOA, and then of course, we're giving Gaza or Palestinians so much in aid. Um, and
Well,
you were talking about. Wait a minute, there was that corridor you're talking about
the
that's on the
Philadelphia
Egypt.
corridor.
Right. Well, they have recently found the Israelis when they looked into these corridors that Egypt, they can't really blame Egypt because they're saying because it's coming from the Egyptian side. They're sending weapons through this corridor up into Gaza.
Yeah, let's be uh, let's be clear on this. They're transiting through Egypt. Egypt is a major port facility and has the Suez Canal. So people are moving things on and off those ships all the time. This is not
Mhm.
the Egyptian government. The Egyptian government is has the peace signature with Israel. So this is people acting of their own accord within Egypt. It's not the Egyptian government.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. But it's the tunnel where it starts. This main tunnel that's recently been found. Um, and the Palestinians are really mad that they took this. But when you look at what's there, there's nothing left, and everybody's fled. There's nothing there, and that's how they were able to find these tunnels. I mean, there's hundreds of tunnels throughout Gaza. But the one they found was one of the biggest that runs along that little corridor, and then it goes up. And when they found it on the Egyptian side, they did question the Egyptian government, and they really were surprised, according to the gentleman that did the report on it. And so, but now they're closing it off, and they're putting, guards up around it. But they said they don't have a clue of how much they were able to shuffle through into Gaza. And they said they may close this off, but there's hundreds more.
So you're probably going to see once this conflict cools a bit, it's still way too hot. You're probably going to see excavators going all the way down that Philadelphia corridor down to like 100 feet deep, and then refilling it in, making sure all that stuff is capped off. So people don't realize that the terrorism that came to the United States, it started right at that Egyptian-Palestinian junction with ideologicals that came from the Palestinians, met with the Muslim Brotherhood folks that came from the university in Cairo. These were students in Cairo. And they met there, and then we had a blossoming of all kinds of chaos. We had Entebbe happen. We had hijackings. We had the Olympic kids in Munich or Berlin, I can't remember which, I think it's Berlin, were shot up. And then we had the hostages taken in London. And then all the rest of us in the free world suddenly had SWAT teams because of this, because London and Germany didn't have a real way to counter these people. And the United States said, if this comes to the United States, which surely it will, how do we counter it? And so we've had a blossoming of these SWAT teams. So it's affected everybody.
Yeah. And I told you earlier, and you said no, maybe not. And I thought maybe all these threats from North Korea, China, Russia, all these other, Yemen and the Houthi, and all of them threatening serious war or missiles or strikes. And I thought, they're not going to do anything before the election. They're going to wait on the election. These are massive, big threats from China saying it,
So,
tomorrow. And North Korea says tomorrow. Russia says tomorrow.
well, nobody's going to attack the United States probably before the elections. But
right.
it
And that's
doesn't
what
mean
you
the
said.
United States. It doesn't mean the United States may not go to war to vulcanize the population, because that's a way to win political favor. So,
Right. Now, see, my whole thing, and this is just opinions, folks. They strike during the Biden administration. It would take the next administration to straighten it out. And if it's Trump, then he's going to have a lot of work. If it's Kamala Harris, they're just going to keep going. They're just going to keep going.
yeah, change only happens when people are willing to stand up and stand at the gates. It's just the way it's always been.
Yeah. Um, Something that came out today and it really, really shocked me was, and it hasn't to do with, war or anything. It has to do with food stamps, folks. 112.8 billion U.S. food stamps. 61.5 million has been stolen by fraud. In 2 years since the Biden administration created a new program, the government has doled out 61.5 million to replace the food stamps. But to hide the info of stolen food stamps, they rebranded it under SNAP. That's why it went to SNAP, because the original food stamp program is being investigated for fraud. And it's under the Biden administration and the Obama administration. It revealed that 79% of the claims were true, but the rest of the claims were not. They were fraudulent. Sometimes people that their names really didn't exist, but they were still getting food stamps. And they found that recipients, that when they put it on these cards, that it was more easier to steal it. But it was under this administration they decided to put it on a debit card. And now they found out this might not have been the best thing to do, because now it started off as people that shouldn't have gotten the food stamps are now fraudulently getting it, and it's only getting worse. And they said,
now they're going to have to reissue all those cards, right? To find out who's
in the
fraudulent.
report, it said they don't plan on it. They're just going to investigate it for now.
Well, that means they're not going to do anything. They're going to have a process.
3 states have reported over 2,000 cases of fraud. And the federal government allows the states to replace benefits stolen as far back as 2022. But the EBT theft due to card skimming, cloning, and similar fraudulent methods, they didn't even announce it until this last year.
Yeah, if you're getting help from the system, you know how they have you do mounds and mounds of paperwork. Make sure none of that paperwork's identifiable with numbers or anything before it goes to the trash can, because somebody will use your name.
That's it. So 22,000 fraudulent food stamp transactions have happened just since January this year. That's 3.7 million. Instead of replacing the card,
it's being stolen from the people who really need it.
Yeah.
That's the first crime.
And then now they're going to, and not only that, but they said they don't have the time to replace the EBT system because they have so many migrants going on the EBT food stamp program, SNAP.
I wonder sometimes about the people who give out that administer the program if they're not tempted.
Yeah. And so, let's see. Me and you talked about this earlier, where your Russia drones violated their airspace, and they flew into Romania during the nighttime attacks, and they did La- Latvia,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Latvia to the north, Romania to the south.
and so civilian targets and port infrastructure was what was attacked. And they said that this was done by F-16 warplanes. And
so they put up 16s to intercept the drones. The drones are probably just what?
Well, see, the whole thing, this is all NATO. So NATO is now saying that Russia has went beyond, above and beyond, and went into NATO airspace, and is now attacking cities in NATO. So this is an attack on NATO, according to them.
Were there bombs, or just have their airspace or incursion? Was anything damaged? Anybody killed, or were they taking pictures?
No, it was they bombed. They bombed.
That is a reason. I wonder how accurate that information is.
Well, it's now, according to the defense minister, they said there were no victims, so no property is infringed in any way. But it was a fact that it was into NATO space, and that it's only a matter of time before Russia hits civilian targets.
Yeah, just because you put it in the air doesn't mean you're going to be able to control it once it's away from you.
Yeah.
You ever see the kids at the local pond, and they've got their little radio controlled boats, and pretty soon they're smashing into each other, and somebody has to swim for whatever that got away from? Well, that's kind of what it's like when you send drones out.
And a lot of this is drones, and we're going into a new wave of war with these drones.
We're talking about new aircraft being developed that are going to be drone carriers, so that you say you fly some sort of a big, huge airplane. It could be an Airbus. It could be anything that's converted, and make them into these drone carriers, and then you just send your swarm out.
Yeah.
And that's being talked about right now.
Yeah.
Boeing, all the way back, let's see, when was it? I think it's just after Desert Storm or Gulf One, whatever you want to call it now, proposed converting 747s into carriers of these, not drones, but guided missiles. And they didn't think that would be viable back then, but looking at it now, maybe they're going to convert some. The argument was way back was if we use a 747 aircraft and an enemy identifies a 747 aircraft as an enemy and it's a civilian, it'll be on us.
Mm-hmm.
And so those arguments are starting to break down now.
Yes. And these drones are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. almost the size of regular size airplanes, small Cessnas. And they're saying even along the border with the cartel, even the cartels have got them up to this size, and they're not sure if they're privately owned small planes or if they're actually drones.
Lycoming is like a premier
Yeah.
producer of small aircraft engines for civilian use in Europe, and it's hard to get a Lycoming motor right now.
Yeah. And as we see all these wars, but when we come to the United States, and we're let's back to the terrorists that we have in our country, and why aren't we using drones to check to see where these ISIS and terrorist camps are? We should be flying over these, but I think they are, because I'm now starting to see more and more of these camps. I mean, I thought that, I thought it was 10, William. I thought it was just 10. Well, I got the recent list, and look at there. These are all terrorist camps, folks, where they train terrorists for this country. If this doesn't scare you, it scares me. William, looks like you're safe over there in Washington. Don't have nothing up that high. But
you know what the Marines would say to these red dots?
Huh?
You know what the Marines would say to these red dots?
Huh?
Looks like a target-rich environment.
Yes, the red dots on it. Let's hit the target. Well, yeah. I know there's one that's not on there. Is the one that's over in Oklahoma. That one's been there. It's right along. It's like right in the corner of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And it's been well known. And yeah, these have been going for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. Alex Jones went to a few of them, and they told him to knock it off. The feds told him to quit doing that. And that was one of the things they shut him down on. I don't know if the shows are still out there, but he did. Him and his crew found these.
Yeah.
And that's here in the United States. These are, to me, this is bases.
New York, which is a training camp.
Yeah. It's to me, it's a terrorist base. Just like when we have those coming up in from China and buying land right next to the military bases. That's not even showing those.
Well, Ellie, those are just farms. Haven't you heard? They're in Congress. Those are farms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're farms until they're not.
That's it. See, that's what China does. It says, hey, we're going to put in some bases, or we're going to put in this, over in Australia, we're going to put in what they call it, marine type. And not only that, but they were starting to get in with the miners. And then come to find out, they started building these little camps, and the building little camps start seeing military guys. And then all of a sudden, it's a military base. And I think I give them 5 to 8 years, William, and those farms are going to be bases.
Well, yeah, they're going to develop however China wants them to develop based on the politics of the time. And what is it that we should expect? I mean, this isn't like being some sort of a person that can look out into the future and tell your fortune. This is like, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's like that guy up in Canada. Oh, yeah, it's going to happen. It may not happen this year. They might wait till next year.
If you build an intersection in a street and you don't put stop signs anywhere or a stoplight, something's going to happen.
That's it. That's it. And this is something that wasn't addressed or isn't addressed in with the Biden administration or the Department of Defense, the State Department, or even by Kamala Harris of what she's going to do. She knows these people are coming in. She was the border czar. She's seen, and and just like we said earlier, they have been caught bringing these people in and put them in sanctuary cities with no rhyme or reason. And now we are sitting at World War III on our doorstep now in our own country with terrorism.
Well, we had people with big money building NGOs that were tax exempt to aid that whole thing, years ago. That's why I've been harping on NGOs for a long time. If you want to do something with the government, get a contract. It needs to be in writing. It needs to be enforceable by the court. And everybody in the country has to be able to have access to it if a congressman wants to know where that money's going.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen with NGOs.
No.
It mixes private funds and it mixes government funds and it mixes foreign government funds. Nobody has any idea where everything's going by the time they get done.
Mm-hmm.
It's a washing machine.
And then, William, to go beyond, this is the first time in history we've had China and Russia so close to the United States, not only just in the Pacific, but the Atlantic and the Gulf. And
they've never worked together. They've absolutely never worked together until this administration.
Yeah.
This administration has rolled back almost all the gains that were created during World War II and the Cold War.
Yeah.
They're doing it faster than it could be built. And that's the scary part.
Not to mention even Russia up around Alaska, that is just so close to Alaska, it could just almost take it. But I've mentioned this before. Alaska is willing to let Russia help the people up along the Aleutian Islands and the far reaches of Alaska because it's too hard to get the supplies up there, or it's easier for Russia. So Russia's like, oh heck yeah. Now we're going to move in, but we're going to move in with our ships.
Yeah, they'll go one island at a time.
Yeah. So, yeah. And that's exactly what was going on with Russia. Russia says, I'm going to help these certain states or countries. Then, here we are, and here we're going to move in, and now it's ours. And Russia's doing the same thing over in Alaska. They're doing the same exact thing.
When we all of a sudden started having sister cities with countries in China and whatnot, or countries in Asia, that's where this started. So that pretty soon you could have individual states being involved in foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
Individual states within the United States don't have the right to engage in foreign policy.
And if
they do so, they do it at their own peril. Like if Alaska is going to allow Russia to bring food into one of these villages that's within the U.S. territory, that's a violation. That's a foreign policy violation. They don't have the right to be doing that. They could be held accountable.
Yeah. And so to me, and when, I looked into it, and for China, it said that California now, folks, is pretty much of the next target for China because they've got the manufacturing plants there. They've taken over Hollywood and the movie industry, and they say mostly have San Francisco. The only thing they don't have is the northern part of California, but they say this could be if we are looking at a Democrat-run state like Newsom. Newsom says, "Oh, China's our friend." No, they're not, William. China's not our friend. It might be Newsom's friend, but he's okay with this, and he wants to bring more in. So
unlimited war on the United States. The thing is, we gave them most favored nation trading status, and when that happened, you could buy land here is part of that NAFTA treaty, I believe. Maybe not NAFTA, but a treaty with China in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff needs to be rescinded because we're not buying property in China. I mean, maybe some corporations are.
Oh, and China
renting
wouldn't let
property.
us, though. China wouldn't let us do that.
No, it's not. There's no reciprocity there.
But of course, they are all over the place here now. And the only thing, I haven't heard, except for Russia up in Alaska, Russia's pretty much keeping their distance. It's China that's making the move forward. And, they got half of Taiwan. And with them around Taiwan and the strait in between Taiwan and, the Philippines and that, and they're over there trying to control the waters. More and more we're seeing China build up its navy for control, where we are cutting the cost and losing our navy. And if we don't straighten our military out and make new changes in foreign,
we're engaging in foreign policy of
Foreign
a
policy,
15 carrier fleet with 11 carriers.
right? And if we don't change our foreign policy for the United States with China and Russia and others, our enemies, they're going to infiltrate us within the next 10 years.
Well, they're already here.
I should say they overtake us. And that's my fear. Yeah. What is that movie, Red Dawn?
There's 30,000 or 30 million uninvited guests in the United States in the last 3 years.
Yeah. And then, and then we hear terrorist camps that they've been using for 10, 15 years. And and we did nothing about it. And this is what got me, was when I contacted this administration in a way, and some Congress and senators, and I mentioned these camps. They called me an Alex Joneser, and I said no. And I sent an email to a few, and they never did call me back. But it was like, they're going to ignore this because, okay, so they got a few little, they're out there camping and singing Kumbaya. That's how they took it.
What do they call that? An inconvenient truth?
So, William, do you have anything else?
So, what's going on in Ukraine is not going Ukraine's way. For all the crazy news that's coming out that they're about to win and always have been about to win and always will be about to win because they want to have won. It's not going well. And NATO knows that to preserve what's left of Ukraine can no longer do that. So they're going to have to make a choice. And when they have to make a choice, they look to the United States first.
I think that's why they're asking for the missiles and the more defense money, because and they want, and they're really asking for us to fire the missiles at Russia.
They want U.S. troops to do what they can't do because they know in their heart of hearts that we have the training and the ability to do it should we want to. But whether we can enter Russia safely doesn't mean we can stay in Russia safely. So we need to really think about that. A wise man once said, pick your enemies wisely, because you might be dancing a very long time.
Yeah. Okay, William, I'm gonna call it a night. We had a really good show, and I didn't want to get too much into politics on 9/11, but a warning of 9/11.
Oh,
What did you forget something?
we had the two candidates talk to the nation last night, and trying to look at that objectively, I think Trump won in the substance department, and I think for all the consternation that Kamala won in the emotions, projecting emotion department. So is it a win? Is it a draw? I think only time will tell. And I kind of looked at all the different arguments that were made. Kamala tended to not answer the questions. She tended not to get fact checked. It didn't seem fair, I think, from the Trump campaign perspective. But she's saying stuff she's never believed in before. And maybe Trump's right.
Yeah.
So that's that.
You know, I could say so much because I knew of her when I was in California, and the one that irks me more than anything is her saying that riding the bus, you know, in her early childhood, and that, you know, it was segregated. She's my age. California was never segregated, folks. It never. And about the time that she's talking, we were having racial riots. And at the same time, I mean, our school was full of African American students, and they were riding the bus all along from
California. Everybody comes from someplace else.
Yeah, it was never segregated.
There's no, like, monolithic groups.
I don't know what earth she was, or what California earth she was on, but it wasn't the California I grew up in. Or, I mean, I had so many phone calls last night from friends that in California saying, we were never segregated out here. What was she talking about? I said, I don't know.
Maybe it was just an alternative reality. We're just not with it.
Well, it makes good for, you know, a 10, 15-minute speech on how horrible California was being segregated. Maybe in the South, but not California.
If somebody doesn't have a respectable amount of history of what's happened in this country, and somebody says something like that, they may actually believe it.
That's it. Okay, William, that is it. And we will see everyone on Friday for trivia and, of course, lifestyle news, unless I bring William on for a news show instead of lifestyle news. Just depends on what kind of news happens over the next 2 days. So, William, I thank you much for co-hosting, and we're having a good time doing it this hour.
I hope everybody has a good evening, and
that's it. So
don't worry, this election will eventually be over.
That's it. It only 55, 56 days. And then, and then we can either gripe, celebrate, complain, or who knows, be scared. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But just like I said, vote on election day, or do a paper ballot. All right, folks, share with friends and family, and hit that bell. And also throw in a comment over there on Facebook. And we'll see you on Friday. Okay, William, you talk soon. All right, I'm going to go get me some dinner. Bye-bye.